Hello everyone. I've decided to make a video to talk about my 50 favorite albums. Don't know what else to say. Number 50 is Underoath's album, They're Only Chasing Safety. Number 49 is From First to Last, Dear Diary, My Teenage Angst Has a Body Count. Number 48 is Sharon Van Etten, Are We There? Number 47 is the Cranberries album, No Need to Argue. 46 is Sigur Rós album, Talk. 45 is Aesop Rock, Skeleton. Number 44 is Fall Out Boy from Under the Cork Tree. Number 43 is Panic at the Disco, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. Number 42 is Five Iron Frenzy's album, The End Is Near. Number 41 is Blindside's album, About a Burning Fire. Number 40, Escape the Fate, Dying Is Your Latest Fashion. 39, My Chemical Romance, Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge. Number 38, Moby, Play. Number 37, Sufjan Stevens, Illinois. Number 36, I couldn't decide which album is his best, so I just put both of them. Citizen Cope, his self-titled album, Citizen Cope, and then the Clarence Greenwood recordings, both at 36. Number 35, Mumford & Sons, Sigh No More. Number 34, Daft Punk, Random Access Memories. Number 33, U2, How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. Number 32, Jack Johnson, In Between Dreams. Number 31, Bob Marley, Legend. Alright, from 30 onwards, I might give a little bit more detail about why I picked these albums. So coming in at number 30 is The Adventures of O.C. Supertones by the Supertones. This album came out in 1995. It's just a couple years after I was born, but it's Christian ska that I loved growing up and I still love to listen to today. Number 29 is Justin Timberlake's 2020 Experience Part 1. I didn't particularly like Part 2 as much, but Part 1 is excellent, and I have fond memories listening to this album with a very good friend of mine. Number 28 is System of a Down, Toxicity. Now, this album, doesn't have the greatest content. I probably wouldn't listen to it anymore, but I remember the drum intro of the title song, Toxicity. Man, I love that drum intro. Number 27 is the Black Eyed Peas, Monkey Business. Now this was also hard to choose which one was better between Monkey Business and Elefunk, but I had to go with Monkey Business, but Elefunk is very close. Number 26 is Blink-182 self-titled album, Blink-182. Now this one was also hard to pick because I was also a huge fan of their previous record called Enema of the State. I remember saving up money and asking permission from my parents if I could buy both of these albums, and when I was finally able to buy them, I basically listened to them non-stop on my CD, and I still revisit them occasionally. I feel like they don't quite fit well on my palate anymore, but very nostalgic for sure. Number 25 is Daughter's album, If You Leave. I was first introduced to Daughter when I saw Ben Howard in concert. They were opening for Ben Howard, and I had to revisit all their music, and If You Leave definitely stuck out as their best. But I also enjoy their album Not to Disappear, which was the album that I guess they were showcasing opening up Ben Howard. Number 24 is Atmosphere's album Lucy Ford. Now, I love Atmosphere and I have listened to a lot of his music. I can't necessarily say that I listen to it anymore because of a lot of the content, but throughout high school and university I listened to basically his whole discography. Lucy Ford is the album that stuck out, but I also love When Life Gives You Lemons, Overcast, and Headshot 7, also very good albums. Number 23 is Neutral Milk Hotels in an Airplane Over the Sea. I feel like it's an iconic album that I listened to maybe around 2014 was when I first listened to it, and man, I revisit it fairly often, but yeah, an iconic album for sure. Number 22 is Josh Garrel's album Over Oceans. I really love this first album, this album Over Oceans. It's pretty raw. There's not massive amounts of production quality to it, but I love this is my favorite Josh Garrel's for sure. He's come out definitely with good albums afterwards, but I gotta say Over Oceans is my favorite album by his for sure. Number 21 is Modest Mouse's album We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank. This was also hard to choose from because I also love the album Good News for People Who Love Bad News. Both of these albums I listened to in university, and I haven't revisited much because I feel like just the tone of a lot of their albums is quite, angry and pessimistic. But I gotta say, I do love these albums. Number 20 is Treats by Sleigh Bells. Now, this band, Sleigh Bells, was introduced to me by a good friend, and we actually went and saw them in concert when they were on tour with the album Bitter Rivals, and their first album, Treats, has stuck out to me as their best, but they've made other good albums as well. However, I can't really recommend specifically Reign of Terror and any album after Bitter Rivals. Just the content of their music isn't the most life-giving. Number 19 is Y La Bamba with Court the Storm. So the first album that I heard of them was Lupin, which I still listen to pretty frequently. However, Court the Storm, I just love how they developed after Lupin, and I love this album. I haven't listened to much of their music since Court the Storm because I know that they kind of broke up and then reestablished and their sound changed a little bit. However, I love Court the Storm. I also love Lupin, but yeah, Court the Storm. Number 18 is Taylor Swift's album 1989. I had to, there's gonna be some pop albums sneaking in here as well because I have a guilty pleasure for some pop music. So Taylor Swift, 1989, my favorite album of hers. It was during a very good time in my life. I also must say that I love the album before this, Red, also an excellent album, but 1989 is my favorite Taylor Swift album. Switchfoot coming in at 17 with The Beautiful Letdown. So this album, I feel like was massive when it came out in 2003. I remember it, spreading throughout all my church friends and in the church as well. And I feel it made a massive impact on music that I listened to, and just the messages that it sent were very encouraging. So it was just a very impactful album. The Beautiful Letdown, number 17. Similarly, coming in at number 16 is Relient K, So this album came out in 2004, and I remember that I was gifted this album by one of my best friends at the time, and I listened to this album on repeat. Man, it was just over and over and over. I could probably, definitely have all the words memorized to every song in this album. I remember playing video games and listening to this album. I remember, cleaning or doing chores listening to this album. It was like all I wanted to do was listen to this Relient K album. Sneaking in at number 15 is Teenage Dream by Katy Perry. What can I say? Katy Perry, guilty pleasure, especially this album. I pretty much love every song in this album. It also has one of my favorite songs in the whole world on this album, Firework. I mean, that's a song that I can listen to anytime, that I never get sick of listening to, and it's the one song that I want to listen to when I'm, driving down the road during summer with the windows rolled down. I want to pump Firework through my speakers. Katy Perry coming in with an excellent album, Teenage Dream. Number 14 is the album Red, Yellow, and Blue by Born Ruffians. Now, this is a band that I basically only have listened to this album. I think it was recommended to me by someone. I don't remember exactly how I got introduced, but I loved this album. And then I tried to listen to some of their other stuff, some of their later stuff, because they're still making music now. But nothing stood up to Red, Yellow, and Blue. This album, it came out in 2008, and I gotta say, I love the sound. And my favorite song in this album is Fox's Made for Life. Number 13 is The Shins album called Chutes Too Narrow. Now, this was their second album that they came out with, their first being Oh Invert World. That is a pretty good album. I definitely would say that it comes at a close second to Chutes Too Narrow, but I love Chutes Too Narrow. And I think when I was younger, so this album came out in 2003, and I remember my uncle listened to this band, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I had to listen to, and it really, it kind of was foundational in music that I like to listen to afterwards, this alternative rock type music. So this had to make it pretty high up on the list just because of how foundational it was to the music that I listened to afterwards. So Chutes Too Narrow, I love this album. I could listen to it. I listen to it often. I gotta say my favorite track though is the opening track, Kissing the Lipless, but a close second is the song Pink Bullets. Either way, every song on this album is excellent. Chutes Too Narrow. Number 12 is the album Parachutes by Coldplay. Okay, so Coldplay, they make excellent music. They've made many excellent albums, but for some reason I always go back to Parachutes. It just feels so authentic. It's not overly produced like some of their other albums are, in my opinion. This album, Parachutes, was one that I continued to listen to growing up, and I revisit often. I love this album, but my favorite song is probably Shiver. Man, I don't know what to say. It's an excellent song. Number 11, Dem Atlas, Downer. And I love this album of his. It is explicit. And everything that he's made afterwards is also pretty explicit, so I couldn't say that I recommend it, and I actually don't listen to it all that often because of that. But Downer is an album that I absolutely love of Dem Atlas. My favorite song, All We Got. I also love the song Drive North, but All We Got, man, it's such a great beat, such great flow. He has great lyrics. There's not much negative that I can say about that song or the album. So, like I said, I can't necessarily recommend it because of the content, but number 10 is Torches by Foster the People. So this album was one that I listened to throughout university. Came out in 2010, and it, when I went to university in 2012, I feel like me and my friends in my dorm would listen to this song anytime that we were driving. It has, the famous single Pumped Up Kicks, but every song on that album is so good. My favorite song personally on the album is called I Would Do Anything For You. It has this like crazy melody with a piano that comes in that, man, I love it. All right, number 9 is Bon Iver's album For Emma, Forever Ago. He also an iconic album, an iconic artist. Basically everything that he comes out with I feel like is a massive hit, but personally this one's my favorite. His other albums, his self-titled album Bon Iver, great. His other album 22 A Million, excellent. My second favorite probably. His newest album I haven't listened to that much, that came out in 2019, but For Emma, Forever Ago, definitely number 1. And my favorite track from that album is The Wolves. Very emotional, very stirring. I love that song. Number 8, King's Kaleidoscope, Beyond Control. Also an artist that makes excellent albums. I can't say a bad thing about any of the music that they've made. Becoming Who We Are, the first one that they came out with, had some excellent songs. Beyond Control then came out and stood above Becoming Who We Are. Then they came out with The Beauty Between, which was also an excellent album with some amazing songs. Some of my favorite songs are on the album. But as a whole, I've got to say Beyond Control stood out. Number 7 is The Killers, Hot Fuss. So this album is amazing. I remember listening to it. I remember talking about it with some of my good friends growing up in youth group and in school. And we were all just amazed at this band that kind of came out of nowhere with their debut album, Hot Fuss, and it was just incredible. It was amazing. You probably know it for Mr. Brightside. That's not my favorite song on the album though. My favorite song is actually Andy, You're a Star. I don't know, something about that song, it's very emotional, very, evokes emotion. Number 6, we're getting into the thick of it. How to Save a Life by The Fray. I love this album. Man, I wonder how many times I've said that phrase during this video. But it's true for this album, How to Save a Life. I mean, the 2 singles on the album, How to Save a Life, as well as Over My Head Cable Car, are just excellent songs by themselves, iconic. But the whole album, man, it's just so good. The opener, She Is, sends, I feel like, a good tone for the rest of the album. I also love the song 100. Just the whole, every song I feel like I can't say a bad thing about. It's so good. All right, number 5 is Merriweather Post Pavilion by the Animal Collective. I don't remember how I got introduced to Animal Collective, but at first I was a bit apprehensive, but the more that I listened to them, the more I love them. And my favorite album definitely is Merriweather Post Pavilion. My favorite song on the albums are Brother Sport. I love that song, and My Girls, which is probably their most famous song. So Merriweather Post Pavilion by Animal Collective coming in at number 5. So these top 4 were very hard to decipher and to pick from. They all are ones that I've listened to again and again and again. I probably have every song memorized on every track on these albums. But coming in at number 4 is 21 Pilots' Vessel. Now this was so hard to choose from because their self-titled album, 21 Pilots, so good, so raw, so emotional. Then they came out with Vessel. Now I feel like this was the album that made them much more popular, much more in the mainstream. And they deserved it. I mean, this album it just has so many good songs. A couple of my favorites: Guns for Hands, Holding On to You, Car Radio. I mean, every song on this album is so good. Trees is also so good. But it was so hard to choose between Vessel and Blurryface because Blurryface is also such an excellent album. I feel like after Vessel came out, I didn't expect that they could come out with another album that would be as good, but man, Blurryface stood up to that test, and they became even more mainstream, which was fine by me because I could listen to them more, and I love Blurryface as well, but I think Vessel takes it for me. Their newest album, Trench, not the biggest fan. I definitely love the album. It's not as good as any of the other 3 in my opinion, but I still listen to that album as well. Coming in at number 3 is Mercury and Lightning by John Mark McMillan. This was also another hard one to choose from because he has many good albums, many good songs. Borderland, also an excellent album. The songs Inside, The Sounds of Breaking Down, also an excellent album. Peopled with Dreams, the newest one that he came out with, also an excellent album. All of the music that he comes out with, I pretty much love. When I first was listening to John Mark McMillan, I actually didn't particularly like it. Just his vocals were something that I had to acquire. I didn't particularly like it when I first heard it, but the more and more that I listened to it, I just love his voice, and I especially love his lyrics. My favorite songs on the album, Mercury and Lightning, are Enemy Love and Persephone. Those 2 songs have such excellent lyrics that have spoken to me, especially a lot recently. I mean, this album only came out 3 years ago. And over those 3 years, I've listened to this album countless times. And these songs especially have been ones that have stuck out, that have made the biggest impact. Number 2 is Every Kingdom by Ben Howard. So Ben Howard has been one of my favorite artists ever since I first heard one of his songs. Old Pine, I remember being introduced to Ben Howard by listening to the song Old Pine on this album, and I was amazed by his guitar skills. I loved his voice, how he sang, and when I listened to the rest of this album, I just fell in love with Ben Howard, and I love this album especially. I feel like he was trying to reach a wide audience with this album, and I loved that, and I love this album. It's definitely my favorite from his. His next album that he came out with, I Forget Where We Were, great album as well. I listened to that one a lot. I would say that he changed his sound a little bit. It was less acoustic sounding and much more electric guitar with big swells and whatnot. And then I was so anticipating the next album that he would come out with after I Forget Where We Were, and he came out with Noonday Dreams. I gotta say, I was a little let down. It definitely changed his sound. I mean, he kept with a lot of the musical tones or like sounds that he had in I Forget Where We Were, but somewhere along the lines he lost his vocal, I don't know, the leading vocals in this album just don't catch you the same way that they do in his other two albums. But that being said, I feel like the more that I listen to Noonday Dreams, the more I like it. But I don't think any of his music can surpass Every Kingdom. However, I wait in high anticipation for what he comes out with next. Then we come to number one. If you're watching this and you know me, you might know what's coming with number one, because I talk about it quite a lot. But number one, by far, is Paramore's self-titled album, Paramore. Came out in 2013. I wish I listened to it when it first came out, but I listened to it 3 years afterwards. I was first listened to this album in 2016, and I immediately was captivated by this album. It's definitely more poppy than their previous albums. I was never really into Paramore that much before this album. Never really appealed to me, but something about this album. I think I watched a video on YouTube about Hayley Williams doing the vocals for Still Into You. I listened to that song and I was like, man, she can sing. And then I listened to the rest of the album and I was blown away by her vocals, by the tone of the album. Every song, man, I love every song on this album. My favorites gotta be Ain't It Fun, Still Into You. Those are the two famous ones from their album. But I also really love the song Ankle Biters. So catchy. I wish that song was longer and I could just listen to that chorus on and on. I love that song. So that's my list of my top 50 favorite albums. All of these albums made an impact on my life, and I would actually love to hear from other people what their favorite albums are. Many of these songs are actually from the 2000s. I think the majority of them are from that time. That's kind of when I first started listening to music myself and laid a foundation of what I like. But I know many other people have many other tastes in music, and I would actually love to hear from you and hear what your favorite albums are. And hopefully I can listen to them and expand my taste in music. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you end up listening to some of these albums, let me know and tell me what you think. We can either talk about how much we love them together, or you can criticize them and let me know what's wrong with them, and that's fine too. So thanks. Bye.